Thank you for tuning in to Koppen Comic. I'm Brian Koppen, and we're here with comic Dave Jenkins. Dave Jenkins, how the hell are you?
What's going on? How are you?
Oh, it's so nice for you to join me here. And real quick, where can people normally see you do stand-up comedy in New York City, and where can they find you online being funny in the meantime?
All right, so online, I could remember that more easily right now. Right online, my YouTube channel is the same thing as I am on every social media, which is just Real Dave Jenkins. Real Dave Jenkins, all one word.
Yeah.
So that's where I am on YouTube. I got some videos there. I got some stand-up there. My website, realdavejenkins.com, has all that, a little bit more. So that's the online presence. Instagram, same thing. Twitter, Real Dave Jenkins, all that. And in person, I'm usually at Broadway Comedy Club, but lately I've been getting all around New York City. So I've done Gotham a few more times. I've done West Side Comedy Club a few more times. And generally, there's a lot of shows that happen in bars in New York City. So the best way to find me is just follow me on anything. And if I'm on a show, I'll post about it a couple times before I actually show up.
Oh, good, good. And then in the meantime, you've been doing. I saw some front-facing videos.
Yeah,
You're kind of an actor as well, aren't you?
yeah, I do comedic acting. I did try regular acting the same, I guess, week that I started doing stand-up comedy. And regular acting, when it's not funny, just all the hard work I put into it, it isn't rewarding, even when it goes well. So like stand up, I could deal with all the bullshit in stand up because when it culminates in like the reception of a really really good show, I'm glowing. I'm like the happiest person ever. So all the bullshit that comes with it, I could handle, and I'm never going to complain about it. But regular acting, no matter how well it went in any one particular place, all the work I knew I had to put into it to get there, it just didn't fill me with any good feelings. So yeah, no regular acting for me. But if it's a funny project, if funny people I know are involved with it, or if I wrote it, or if I'm filming it, then I'm happy to do it. Yeah.
So it's like Sebastian Maniscalco in The Irishman. Like you would not want to be cast, even if Scorsese was doing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think where I saw you, you popped up on my Amazon Prime, and I see that you're in Happily Ever After. You're the male lead in a comedy about kind of a couple, and it's a mockumentary where you see a relationship being filmed, but you also see those asides where you guys are in your little confessional booth talking directly to the camera about what just happened or what you think about the other person, and then ultimately I think you guys also see each other's confessionals at the end. Is that correct?
So there's talking heads, I think at the beginning to like and that would be like I guess day one, like, oh yeah, we're like kind of like in a pilot of The Office where like they're actually talking to the cameras, like, oh yeah, we're excited to get started. And yeah, then I think at the very end we have like alone, it's like single talking head confessionals, and then at the very very end, I think all that gets thrown in our face together on the couch.
And it does not end. You guys have a lot of work to do by the end.
Yeah, we've grown, but there's a reason growing pains is a, there's a reason that's a phrase and a
Oh, I,
TV show.
oh, I love that. And then it sounds like Jenya is a comedic actress, and she write the thing and then cast you because you're just, the funniest dude with the best hair.
Thank you about the hair. So I don't think I'm not sure if Jenny cast me directly. I know that Jenny wrote the sketches. She's a comedic actress. She also does stand up too.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so it's worth checking out all her social media. And I know that she went to the guy who produced it, Jim Mandrinos, who runs New Media Comedy, which I've done a million projects with them. That's how I'm even on their radar. So he just emailed me and said, we got something. If you're interested, let me know. So I read it. I was like, yeah, these are funny. And then I met her. What I can't remember, because it's interesting that you brought it up, I can't remember if she told me that she picked from a group of guys that he picked, and then she sat on, and then she just chose me, or I guess it doesn't matter. But
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
because you guys are not a real life couple.
No, yeah, we met the first day of shooting.
Acting. So yeah, you're just that was something where you acted in a big role. Was that one of the bigger roles you've had, or not really?
I don't think so. I mean, we actually filmed it very efficiently. I think it only took 2 real days. Like all the sketches were filmed in one day, and the confessionals were filmed on another day. So we got it wrapped up pretty quick. It's up there with some of the bigger things I've done. Yeah.
But yeah, it's on Amazon Prime, and so everybody can watch it. It's happily ever after.
Yeah, that's what I wasn't expecting because a lot of the videos I do with new media, they're growing. So it's very interesting to have been there when they had. I don't even think they had a studio space when I knew them. So
Okay.
I'm still kind of used to doing projects for them that end up on like Instagram or YouTube. But yeah, it was actually a huge surprise that it ended up on Amazon. I keep forgetting how good they're getting at what they're doing and how much of a reach they have now.
And are they going to produce your comedy special?
If they let me, yeah. I think I always thought in my head I would do that myself, but yeah,
Okay.
I forget that someone might want to do that for me. So I'll ask them when I get to that level.
And then what kind of stuff is, what's going to be in the Dave Jenkins special? Like what can
Yeah.
people expect when they come see your show? And also, what kind of stuff are you doing in your front-facing videos? I know I see you on Facebook. I know, I see your videos on Facebook and Twitter. And what are the things that are interesting enough to you that you're putting them in these videos, and also that they might end up in your special?
Yeah, so the front-facing videos are those were my response to being in quarantine because my favorite way to write jokes is to not really be too rigid with how I want to do it or whatever it is. I just want to kind of go on stage and try the funny thing and then see what happens and then actually like turn it into something real and good, like actually put some craftsmanship into it. So those videos were more or less what you would see me do at like an open mic or like a low stakes show where I'm trying out new material. So like I know very well that what I'm doing in those front facing videos is not stand up. It's definitely not stand up caliber material out of me.
Right.
But it's how I would sort of kind of blindly like motion or what is it like when you're like putting your hands out in front of you if you're blind. I don't know if there's a word for that, but yeah, sort of just feel my way around. That's what it is. Just sort of like feel my way around an idea or a joke and hit it from a few different angles. And then when it becomes real stand up, it's usually just one of those angles and it's tightened and it's polished and it's executed probably in every case a lot better. So that's really just what it was. It was something I could wake up and just do once a day and have some sense of like normalcy and some sort of schedule just to give myself just the tiniest bit of pressure to just, all right, you got to do a video today. What's it going to be about? And every time it was always so rewarding because there were so many days where I'd sit in front of my laptop. I'm like, this sucks. I don't want to do it today. And then I would like turn off my phone and close the door and I'd be like, all right, what do you want to talk about? And then it would just be something I'd let myself talk about something to myself that isn't funny and then find what might be funny about it and then expand upon that. And then, like an hour later, there's usually some video to go along with it.
And do you find yourself getting more feedback with these front-facing videos than you would at an open mic? And if so, will that kind of then be your testing ground, even post-corona?
It's possible. Probably not likely because one of my favorite parts about my stand-up is the element of surprise. Like not every joke is I'm not pulling the rug out of you from every joke, but so many of my jokes are revelatory in a way where I'm kind of revealing bits of information in a way that I want to be surprising. So I probably wouldn't want shitty versions of those ideas online forever.
Yeah, I guess unless yeah, and I suppose if you deleted it, it wouldn't, go on forever. But if somebody else downloaded it, they will see Dave Jenkins just his open mic caliber comedy, which is probably good, but maybe not as good as a polished angle.
It would probably be not good for the level that I'm at now. So I
Yeah.
have saying in those videos that as soon as I get on stage, I'm either gonna delete those videos or or hide them from the public until later. Because yeah, a lot of those ideas are stuff that I wanted to talk about on stage, but then I couldn't because of the virus. So those were ideas that I probably would end up getting into the first special. So like for as far as that goes, my jokes are kind of like maybe like three pronged, but they all try and I hope relate back to each other. One of them is like autobiographical, so I just kind of talk about my childhood and my relationships with my sisters. I have three older sisters, my parents, and like my grandparents. And my neighborhood had a huge impact on me growing up, like Catholic school, all that stuff. So anything that made me me is like one big angle that I just sort of draw from that. Another one is where I'm at now and all those kind of relationships and where I think I might be going. And then a third one, which is probably just as big as the other two, is just literally random shit that pops into my head that I think is funny. I don't know how else to describe that.
And
Like,
how do you work that into, like, how does that, I suppose that's the second. That's well, now I suppose that's the third prong. And so how do you then mesh together that funny shit that pops into your head with things like, your upbringing and also the cast of characters in your life? Like, how can you make the organic transition into and out of that? It just seems difficult for a layman like me.
yeah, no, that's a good question. So basically, I think Chappelle talks about it in one of his specials, but I always think of it that jokes are written one of two ways. One way is, like I said, with like autobiographical stuff about my life. It's where I go into a seemingly not funny part about my life and I just start asking a million fucking questions until something pops up where I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably not that normal. I should talk about that. Um, so that's me looking for a joke and then finding it. Whereas the other shit that pops into my head is I'll just be sitting there without any stimulus. My brain's pretty much on autopilot, and then I'll just start laughing about something. And those are the jokes that get written backwards. Like those jokes are almost always, even after they've been polished and refined, the punchline is almost always word for word the same because that's what popped into my head and it makes me laugh so much. So from there, you have to literally work backwards and say, all right, well, here's a funny idea, but how do I come up with an excuse to talk about this?
Yeah.
And then sometimes it depends on, you could just lie. Some lies are really good for that. You just have to be careful about what you lie about. Like you can't
Like,
lie about siblings that don't exist or about dead
right.
people that aren't dead. You could lie about where you were the other day. All that shit is fair game. As long as it's not like an identity creating lie, then I think it's fair game.
So I suppose if you naturally had an oddball neighbor who was always saying wacky shit, you could put something wacky that popped into your head so that
And
it's coming,
actually,
it's coming out of his mouth.
yeah, exactly. And that's such a believable lie that I wouldn't even have to have a neighbor. Like there's also the suspension of disbelief when it comes to like any joke about driving. I mean, I do so much of my material in New York City where I usually don't have access to a car. No one else does. So any joke about driving is usually met with some suspicion, like, wait, really? But if you keep it and work at it, eventually if it's good enough and it's fast enough, people just accept it. I mean, and most people have driven a car; they're gonna know what's going on. And then
Yeah.
if you do a joke on the road, of course those people drove. They drove to get there. So
Yeah. And
it,
also, even as a New York audience, I mean, they could think that maybe you are just a road comic who drives constantly. So it's all fairly
yeah,
believable.
totally. And yeah, I think yeah, lies about like you could probably lie about a girlfriend as long as if you could fit a lie into like any archetypal character that everyone's aware of, like some kind of boss or like some crazy ex or something like that. I think that's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
So long as whatever you're lying about isn't like the consequences aren't huge because
Yeah.
otherwise it's like I have a joke about that I made there's some girl ghosted me because I made her fail a drug test, which I had no idea about because I've never given her any drugs, and to my credit, she didn't do any drugs. But it turns out that because I do drugs and she swallows, she could still uh, test positive for whatever it may.
That's
And
wonderful.
yes, but the thing is, that's one of those jokes that I wrote backwards. That stupid idea just popped into my head. I'm like, wait, can you really? If you swallow some guy, can you test positive? So then I'm like, shit, how do I come up with a reason to talk about that? And then
Yeah.
then I just yeah, you make up a girlfriend that dumped you. It's not like it's not my wife. It's not some fucking person that I'm gonna have to see every day. It's some ex. Everyone has some ex. So that I'm comfortable lying about.
And so, I mean, since you mentioned wife, it leads me to the question, which is there anything in Happily Ever After that someone in your life would say, yeah, that's Dave, or no, that's not? Like, I know you didn't write it and they didn't write it with you in mind, but is there anything from that character that you identify with?
Yeah, probably. I would say the confessionals, particularly because the confessional parts of that special are improvised. So, uh,
Ah,
yeah, those weren't written. Anything that was in a confessional, we did on another day, and they were like, "Here's what we're gonna tell you. Just kind of start talking, and we'll see. We'll see what we can pull out of it."
and it
So
makes for more naturalistic acting too if you're riffing a little bit.
for sure, yeah, because as far as I was told, my character, I didn't really have much information about my character, so it's not like I was even trying to be anyone else. So I would say anything you hear me say in that confessional scenes of that special is more or less me in a relationship, just trying to like put out fires and stuff like that.
But you're almost kind of tipping to what people can expect if they get in a relationship with you, right?
I would say so. Yeah, I'm very like I'm very anti-conflict. It's very hard for me to get into a screaming match with someone unless that's all they're coming at me with. But other than that, I mean, I'm in a relationship now. I have a girlfriend. Everything's great.
And
Uh,
what did she think about seeing you with somebody else for that was it 20 minutes of happily ever after?
I mean, she gets it. She's pretty evolved. She's not like, she's not gonna explode on me for whatever it is I may have done in that. I will say there is another project where I don't know how light of the mood this is, but there's another project that I did where I have to do a very violent sexual act, like I'm the bad guy, and
Wow.
that was very hard to film. That has not come out yet.
Well,
Um,
I would hope it would be hard to film.
that was literally like acting up to that point was more or less, I don't want to say easy, but like I could figure it out. Sorry, there's a bunch of people there's about to be a baby shower party happening at where I am right
Oh,
now.
good, good.
But with the doors closed, I think we should be
Yeah,
good.
just talk about your violent sexual act pretty
I know,
loudly so
I
they
know.
can hear
Luckily, they can't hear you, so that's fine.
it.
But yeah, I had to do that. That hasn't come out yet. I'm very worried for my girlfriend to see that because that was like I really had to put on a fucking monster of a face to make that work. And I'm pleased with the ability I had to act something like that. But Jesus Christ, if it's any, like it, have you ever like I was like literally miming that ripping my own face off of my face when they would say cut because I just like I would have this fucking scowl on and I'd be
Yeah.
doing all the awful stuff and they'd be like all right cut and I'd be like oh it's like literally it's like I was underwater the whole time and like finally I could breathe it was the goddamn worst
And is there
but
anything from this acting, like even, playing a monster, is there anything that can make its way into your stand-up act? Like, do you do any characters? Do you do any act outs that might be helped with, oh, there's another side of Dave Jenkins. Maybe I should throw it on stage.
I'm not much of a character actor. I don't really, yeah, I wouldn't say characters make their way into my stand up. I mean, I for sure have act outs, but they're not like those act outs aren't dependent on my ability to do an accent or any particular mannerisms I might adopt for that character. Any character I have in an act out is usually just servicing a more effective way to tell the joke. A lot of jokes can be all tell and no show, so you got to show a little bit here and there. So any
Yeah.
act, it's usually just that. It's usually just like kind of like how Bill Burr does an act out. He's not gonna put
Yes.
on an accent. He's just gonna put it. He's just gonna give some voice to whoever's in the joke, and then that'll usually deliver the punchline better.
And is there anything of Bert in your act? I mean, do you have any kind of rants or whatever? Like it sounds like you're conflict avoidant, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're keeping it out of your act. That could be,
Oh
the
yeah,
reasons why you can avoid conflict is because you go on stage and rant about what just happened instead of bringing it into your relationship.
no, absolutely. So that's a good point. I definitely have rantier aspects of jokes. I would say the longer the bit is, the more into that I can get. Right now, because I'm still building an act, I have a lot of like a million unrelated jokes that are all like 30 or 40 seconds long. So
Right.
sometimes that can get hard to get into that. But yeah, like I have longer jokes about growing up because those are the ones I've worked on the hardest. So like any jokes about like my sisters, my family, my parents, growing up the youngest, yada yada yada. All those are a little a little more ranty. Where I'm like, can you believe this? Like just saying like yeah, it's a lot of revelatory where I'm just spelling out all these different pieces of information and then I line them up in a way where I'm like, can you believe that's what I thought was normal at the time?
And so some of this is you making fun of your reaction back in the day, like I was raised a certain way, and can you believe that that happened, or can you believe that this was my reaction to that, and you're just much more evolved right now, but you still have some of those tendencies to avoid conflict or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah. So that all kind of circles back to I don't know if you've had to if you've seen the Truman Show, right?
No, no,
Oh, so do you know what it's about?
yeah, it's like all his life is being recorded.
Yeah, so the guy in charge of it, the director, he gets asked a question like why do you think he's never caught on? And the guy says, I want to get the quote right. He goes, everyone accepts the reality with which they're presented.
Ah,
So he was in he was in that TV show since literally he was like a fetus, I think since before he was born. So he never thinks anything is weird because that's his normal.
yeah.
So one of the best things to draw upon is your life when like the first 5 to 10 years, anything in front of you that minus like being a refugee or something, anything in front of you is, oh, okay, this is just how everyone And then you go any traveling or any sort of like class migration. If you get exposed to someone of a higher or lower class, and you're like, oh wait, whatever I thought was normal is not fucking the case at all. And that realization is always so funny. That like that explosion or connection of ideas that whatever you thought was fine is totally, of course, it's not fine. Like any reasonable person wouldn't think that. So that's so much fun. That's one of my favorite parts about just digging and seeing what I thought was fine.
Well, it sounds like you have, they call it finding your forever fountain, like once you find out what you love the most, you can just talk about it forever. And the fact, I love your Truman Show. I guess it's a metaphor or whatever the hell it is. Like, I really like the fact that, nobody's going to go around rejecting their own reality. That would be untenable.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah, you have to accept it.
exactly. And it's such a shame because so many comics, like I'm this straight white man, so obviously, like there's no real abuse in my life or anything like that. It's societal or even private. And a lot of comics are like that too, and they have this weird like guilt or something, or this weird feeling of like they shouldn't be doing stand up because they didn't have this traumatic life that they have to go on stage about. I'm like, that's not necessary. That's not a requirement. That's just one of the things you can do. Like you don't, and also fucking dig, grab a shovel. Whatever you think about your boring life is probably not fucking cool. All right, like
Right.
there's so many. I haven't written jokes about them, so I don't want to just say. But there's so many things about like my grandparents that I thought was normal, or like the fact that this thing happened, or one of my grandpas was an NYPD cop, but for like 10 years,
Okay.
and that's not normal. Like there's something happened. He I don't know what he did, and I don't think anyone can prove it, but I'm pretty sure 10 years in, they were like, hey, you got to go. Here's a pension. Shut up about it. Because
And you could speculate wildly based on factual things about your grandparent that you've noticed along the way.
exactly. The guy carried a gun on his ankle his entire life. This,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of little things that people dig. People's lives are fairly fucking interesting. They just don't think they are because they've seen them every day forever.
yeah, it's a shame that people think so little of themselves that they're not interesting because they didn't get hit by a fucking bus when they were 8. I mean, you can find something. We're all human. Like I tell jokes about having sisters that I thought were specific to me, and they are extremely specific to me. But what's good about jokes is that you kind of like you ping pong between the root of a joke and then you get to the leaf of the specific punchline. But so many people hear the leaf and their mind goes straight back to the root, and then they create their own leaf. They're like, oh shit, his sisters put makeup on him. Oh, my sisters did this thing to me. Oh fuck, I can laugh at that. So then those people are laughing in a relatable way to a joke I have about something that didn't happen to them. And so many
Yeah.
jokes operate that way. So that's what's really good about that. You find something specific thinking it might not be relatable, but it is. It of course it is.
Well, it makes me want to see next time when New York City opens, I want to see the real Dave Jenkins. And it sounds like to do that, I will just follow him on Twitter like I do, but also just, that across social platforms and realdavejenkins.com.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much.